Welcome to the channel. Thank you everyone for tuning in. Today's video is a little bit different. I've gotten around to reviewing this Citizen NB1041 and I went down a rather large and deep rabbit hole when I was planning for this review. And I think this watch does need quite a full and thorough review. Now, initially when I unboxed this watch roughly about 4 or 5 months ago, and that's when I purchased it. It's my first Citizen purchase as well. I bought it because it does look quite similar to a SARB033, which is why I think this particular model is pretty significant. This video may go on. I've got a fair few notes on this, so I don't know how long this is going to be. And I think in terms of appeal, this is definitely going to appeal not to the wider audience, but more so to the very, I don't know, how can I put it, a very niche collector, somebody who collects Japanese watches, somebody who's, very enthusiastic about this particular range. Now, all watches that I'm going to show you today are unfortunately discontinued. However, you can still find them available, and I think they are pretty significant pieces to have in your collection. If you've got the spare £400-500 that these watches retail for, on the second-hand market, I think still now it is worth it because the specifications on offer are absolutely incredible. Now with the Citizen, there's two particular models which I think are very interesting and again equally significant. You've got this, which I have in hand, the NB1041, and you've also got the NB1050. Now they both do vary. One is a 41mm slightly dressier watch, and then you've got the 1050 which comes in at 38mm, a lot sportier and a bit more of a direct comparison with the Seiko Sarb033. Now the reason I bought this particular one, the 1041, I was considering the 1050. However, I think the dial setup, the handset used, a bit of the text styling was a bit closer to the Sarb033, and I ended up going with this one. I felt the Citizen NB1050 was just a touch too plain for what I wanted. If you are considering buying a watch that fits this category, or you're considering buying the Sarb033, this is definitely something to look at. So firstly, I think let's start off with the overall specifications, and I'll give you some interesting points as I talk about it. Now the Citizen is highly spec'd. You've got AR coated sapphire crystal, 100 meters of water resistance, push-pull crown, screw down case back. And the best thing about this watch, it runs the Miyota 9011 4Hz movement, which beats at 28,800 vibrations per hour, with a -10 to +20 seconds accuracy. And in my experience, I've got a fair few Miyotas in hand, the 9000 series. I mean, they run close to 5 seconds on average, the ones that I have, and very accurate and very consistent. The NB1050 is the same exact specification as this 1041. Dimensionally, that's where it differs. So this comes in at 41mm in case diameter, 11mm thick, which is crazy, and then a 47mm lug to lug. Yes, it does have male end links, which don't add too much. I think it'll be around the 50-51mm mark. Now the release date for this watch was February 2019, and the price point it came at, or you can get it at now, is around £350 to £450. For your information, I picked this up for a low price of 250 quid. So if you're getting this watch around that price point, I mean, they're very rarely in the UK. These are very exclusively JDM models, and I really don't like how, exclusive these watches are. They do need to be in the UK and be available to the wider market because they are just incredible watches. Now, the NB1050, dimensionally, is a bit closer to the Sarb. That's 38mm by 10.5mm by 47mm. And that was released about a couple of years after, in May 2021, priced roughly the same. And now, at the top end, you're expecting to pay around £480, which is crazy money. Don't get me wrong, it is very expensive, but you do get a lot of specs. And, the bottom end of the price is £380. Now, in comparison to the Sarb033, we know the dimensions of this, 38mm times 11.5 by 45mm. With female end links on the original bracelet that it comes with, which is the one I have on my Sarb037 remake. Specs wise, sapphire, 100 meters of water resistance with a screw down case back and a push pull crown. Now my biggest issue with this Sarb, and it has been the same issue on a lot of the watches that uses base movement, is the 6R15. It's a 3Hz movement beating at 21,600 vibrations per hour. And they've upped the power reserve to 50 hours with the 6R15. And my only qualm is not the lower beat rate, it's actually the reliability. They are known for having amplitude issues, reliability issues. Consistent timekeeping is a bit of a miss on this particular movement. I think they've got 4 iterations, A, B, C, and D. and that's been transferred over to the 6R35. Now I am wearing a 6R35 movement on wrist. This is the SPB 207, the Seiko MM200. And yeah, my biggest problem is just that, and they've continued that movement on, so that does kind of bring it down straight away. Now, interestingly enough, the Sarb was released in June 2008, so there is roughly how many years difference? 11 years difference between this Sarb033 and the Citizen. So it's not a exact comparison. The previous watch is 11 years older. However, I think it's a good indication, especially for me, as someone in the hobby, and this being my first Citizen, is that the level of value Citizen or Seiko are willing to put in their watches. We've seen Seiko, they do shy away from some of the specifications. They do hold back. I mean, that 6R15 going to 6R35, they've continued that on for such a long time. They really haven't released a really good, I think, mid-tier movement within the under £1,000 range, in my opinion. So as well as being a somewhat direct comparison between both watches, it'll also be a bit of a comparison between Seiko and Citizen, and the better value provider, because both are, as you know, Japanese giants in the watch manufacturing industry. Combined, they've earned some pretty impressive accolades. If you just look into the history of Seiko and Citizen, you will be shocked and impressed at what they've delivered, to the whole watch industry. So let's not waffle on any longer, and let me introduce you properly to the Citizen NB1041. Now, this is a watch that in hand, straight out the box, it definitely looks like it's had the full treatment. They have gone in with the specifications, the finishing, the dial down to the bracelet. It shows how much work they've put into this watch under the £500 category. There really isn't a particular area which I felt that it has such a huge weakness, something which stands out. In comparison to the Sarb033, one of the biggest problems that you'll find, and what people complain about, is the bog standard bracelet that comes with it. It's such a dull bracelet in comparison to the overall design of the watch, the case style, etc. It doesn't really match the aesthetics, in my humble opinion. Whereas I find the Citizen does excel in every aspect. Now, minus the 1051, because that does have a much more toned down bracelet. I think the Citizen NB1041 goes more towards the dressier side, and the 1051 goes more to the sportier side, because the Citizen 1050 sports that similar bracelet and slightly different handset, whereas the 1041, as you can see, goes all out, giving you a dressier bracelet and a dressier dial setup. So when we look at the dial on the Citizen, you'll find a glossy piano black dial embellished with light catching polished batons for hour markers, and these hour markers are only complemented by the broad Dauphine style hands just to maximize that light reflection. Now, the applied logo, although equally well finished, it does seem to disappear under certain lighting conditions due to its polished nature, and I think a brushed logo would have definitely helped it stand out a bit more. Now, another feature that you'll find on this dial when you look a little closer is that date wheel. It definitely stands out. While the Seiko uses a laminated date disc, plastic made, either the black one or the white one, this Citizen actually uses a metallic date wheel with not printed but painted numerals, which adds another layer of luxury. I think Seiko only offers this on the more expensive 8L movements, similar to the SL models like the Marine Master 300. That's where you'll see the metallic date window with painted numerals for the date. Now, close-ups also show the crispness of these painted numerals and the higher quality of offering given by Citizen. Now, both watches, while having dressed-up faces, this is where I think they transferred to the sportier side. They both offer detailed chapter rings or minute tracks. There's no need for all these increments, but it gives you a sense of accuracy, whereas a simpler scale would definitely have sufficed. Now, I think at this point, this is where the Seiko does go a step further, because it provides you loomed finishes under the hour markers and on the handset, whereas the Citizen is void of any loom, taking it back to that dressy aesthetic. Now, aside from the date window on the Sarb033, I much prefer the dial layout of this in comparison to the Citizen. A couple of things for me which really do look better is, first and foremost, that silver applied logo. I think it is brushed because you can see that a lot better than the logo on the Citizen. A lot more visibility, and it doesn't disappear under different lights. And I also much prefer the handset used on the Seiko. I think it's a little bit more defined. You've got the loom application in the center, but you've also got some interesting lines there. And I really love that seconds hand that is present on the Seiko. Very thin and fine needle-like, and of course that skeletonized counterweight in the shape of a diamond. And what I also prefer about the handset used on the Seiko Sarb033 is also the length. You'll find they extend just a touch longer than they do on the Citizen, but both dials are fairly equally matched. That jet black piano dial looks awesome. Those polished baton hour markers, just both do look incredibly well made. Now, moving on to the case, I think both have equally well finished, well defined and detailed cases. Both use polished highlights along the lugs, especially with the Citizen. You'll see very fine brushing on the lugs and the side of the case, complementing that slim profile and that polished highlight that stretches all the way along the case. And with this use of dual finishing, the polishing and the brushing, I think both give you that really nice crossover between beauty and practicality. Now, the Seiko case does show a step design. The brushing is quite soft, allowing the lugs to stand out, and the whole side of the case is fully polished. Now, the case profile of the Seiko is slightly thicker due to that protruding case back. Now, in comparison, when we look at the Citizen, it is slightly more flattened out. It's got a sleeker look, a very low profile case back, and I do find the the thickness of the Citizen very impressive, as well as that slim case design. Now, looking at the crowns, I think both the Seiko and the Citizen are equally practical. They both have larger than average crowns. I think the Citizen is just around 6.5 mil, and so is the Seiko. Now, on the crown side, the Seiko is void of any crown guards, but the Citizen does give you nice polished crown guards, which match the case profile perfectly. Up until now, I think both watches have been matched quite equally, with small differences on the dial and some of the aesthetics. But this is where it all changes on the next stage. When we look at the case back, for example, the Seiko's exhibition case back does look rather rudimentary, like seeing through a maintenance hatch. I mean, they have tried to improve it by adding some sort of striping along the rotor, but nothing really on the movement. So the only difference between this and the NH35 is that striping mentioned on the rotor. But you do have some nicely engraved lettering and specifications on the edge of the case back, slightly improving it over the Seiko NH35s, where you'll find they just printed onto the glass. But in comparison, that Citizen puts it to shame. And the Citizen exhibition caseback actually looks like an exhibition. You've got a beautifully decorated Miyota 9011. You can see the skeletonized movement with the Citizen signage. You'll see the striping on the base or the chassis of the movement rather than just the rotor. And even the caseback does have some nice fluting around the side, fully polished, and specs are sort of etched in around the side. So just comparing the case back on both watches, you can just see what you're dealing with. Different levels with Citizen, a lot of things going on in the movement, and we know it is a much higher grade of movement than the Seiko. Now, Seiko drastically pales in comparison when we look at the movement, but we see something similar when we compare the bracelets. The Citizen offers a lot more details, a more complex bracelet with better finishing. Here, the bracelet complements the case perfectly. You've got these mid links with the polished sides. It is a full, I believe, a 5-link bracelet, pin and collar design, but everything is solid. There's no sharp edges as well, and as I said, the finishing is truly beautiful. Fully brushed bracelet. You've got faceted links, and just made so incredibly well. And as I said, my first experience with the Citizen, I was very impressed with the overall level that I can see across the whole watch. Now, with the Seiko, it is a huge letdown. I think this bracelet is by far the weakest point of the Sarb. The links look standard, look very plain in comparison. The brushing is just uniform, but there's nothing special about it. You do have a slight polished lip on the edges of that bracelet, but it doesn't really do much for the watch, and I don't think it really matches the beauty captured on the dial and hands, and also transferred across to the case. And this is my biggest issue with Sarbs. It always has been. However, the previous line, the SCVS 001 and the 003, did take care of this when they brought in, this bracelet, which has a lot more detailing going on, 5 links, brushing and polishing, and it does look like a much better made bracelet. However, with the SARB033, they didn't carry that on. Now, it's things like that which annoy me about Seiko, and they don't seem to carry that specification on. The older model has such a better bracelet. However, I feel the newer one offered a bit less. And when we compare the movements as well, the 6R15 is quite an old movement. And I know the Seiko came out 11 years prior to the Citizen, but 11 years on, Seiko still haven't done anything different. As I said, I want that mid-tier movement, sub $1,000 or sub £1,000, and even around the £800 mark. I think they can definitely afford to give us a mid-tier movement with a higher beat rate and just very good accuracy. Having said that, I still think the Seiko Sarb will be more favorable just due to that compact case shape. It's that Goldilocks zone for a lot of people. I think 38mm, 46 lug to lug, and that is perfect for most. Only issue is they're just slightly thicker than the Citizen. This is where I think the Citizen NB1050 would have been a much better comparison, but unfortunately I don't have that watch in hand. Only thing with the 1050, it just has slightly sportier or toned down hands. Now, in terms of fit on the wrist and look, there's not much I can say about the Sarb that you don't already know. Near perfect dimensions, and for me, they are perfect. I really do enjoy wearing this, and since I bought this Sarb and the other Sarbs that I've got, I have decided to go a bit smaller on my watches, and I do really prefer the 37 to 38, even 39mm sizes now, and really fits very comfortable and conforms amazingly well. And that bracelet is a much better bracelet than the stock. Now, the Citizen being 41mm, it is slightly larger in appearance on the wrist. It does take up a bit more. However, the lug to lug and the actual thickness of the watch does make it really well rounded. It makes it wear okay as well, well balanced on the wrist, and you don't really mind that larger visual because it is an impressive visual. You get lots of gorgeous light play just reflecting off those silver polished batons, and the Dauphine handset does a great job of reflecting that light. Just the Citizen logo does disappear from time to time, but that jet black dial just sucks in that light as well. So it is very nice to look at, and wearing this, I've not felt it's been too big at all. As I said, the case profile as well makes it sit perfectly well, and when you catch yourself looking at this watch, the bracelet angles, the case angles, it's something you just always have to look back, and you do end up admiring it from time to time throughout the day. And it's the same for the Sarb. The hour markers, I think there's something special about baton hour markers, Dauphine hands, jet black dial. I think it does work. I think if any watch brand does that combination, they can make it work really well. Very understated. So I think this information is valuable, but it's going to be valuable to only a very small select group of people that are considering this choice. Or if you never knew about the Citizen, it's definitely worth checking out. I think there is a fair bit of availability. It is still scarce in comparison to the Sarb033. There's loads of Sarbs out, but they do demand a much higher price. So thank you as always for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.